how quickly, I forget exactly, I can Google it while you're answering the next question, but I forget exactly when Bremer put that in, if it was like a month in or 2 months in or whatever, but how quickly did your regular Sunni citizens, not even just some of the ex-government officials you just pointed out, but the regular people on the street who are Sunnis, how quickly did we suddenly see a ton of what used to be perfectly normal law-abiding citizens now living in a war-torn zone who suddenly say fuck it and become pretty radicalized as a result of the policies we put in?
So we take over the country, and by April, pretty much most of the fighting is over. By late summer of 2003, things are starting to blow up. Already. And by 2004, it's full-on insurgency. So it didn't take very long at all. And it's really not any mystery, because you do have a very large part of the population that's sort of used to living a certain way and used to have the levers of power. Suddenly they don't have it anymore, but the guys that they used to beat up on are now coming after them, the Shiites. And so and Zarqawi very smartly saw this potential, and he very deliberately tried to get fighting started between the two sides. One of his objectives was to go blow up things that Shiites cared about, their mosques, their marketplaces, their communities, their schools, with the deliberate intention of setting off fighting between Sunnis and Shiites. And within that chaos, that was going to be his moment in which he was going to come up to power himself. And so,
obviously, he had been completely on the radar in this post-Colin Powell speech world, to the intelligence people, I'm saying. So, did the CIA immediately put a priority 1 on him to take him out? And, I mean, they didn't right away. Yeah. So what went wrong in the chase? And in a small world situation, I actually had Ryan Tate in here, I was telling you about, who ironically was one of the Marines. I didn't know this when we were recording the podcast, but he told us on air in episode 117, he was one of the Marines who was a part of these many wild goose chases for al-Zarqawi in Iraq.
It was intense.
Now that was like right before we got al-Zarqawi, right?
Yes, and I chased them too. This was badass. So we have this vehicle checkpoint, and out of nowhere, and it comes in on the radio, and then there are Amtrak tanks, the amphibious tanks, just flying over the Euphrates River.
Yeah, by late 2003, the CIA is figured out, and we get into this to some extent in the book, that Zarqawi was behind a lot of the bombings that they were seeing, and he was big trouble. And by 2004, early 2004, they were going after him full time. And it became a number 1 priority for the President of the United States. There were meetings in the National Security Council about Zarqawi. How do we get rid of this guy? And so they quickly grasped the sort of the danger of this new insurgency that was bubbling up. And yet it took a very long time, because his operational security was really good, his network was really good, and he could zip from town to town, go undercover. He had a small entourage. He didn't talk on a cell phone, so it became very, very hard for him to track down. But he seemed to be everywhere at once.
As he gained a lot of power too, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understood this right. Did al-Qaeda suddenly start reluctantly saying, oh, well, this guy's kind of a part of us, so we need to give him more funding? Yeah. Is that also happening?
Yeah, exactly. So bin Laden reaches out to Zarqawi and says, look, we'll make you an official franchise. So this is the first al-Qaeda franchise. You're going to have your own separate division. It's going to be called Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And that was really just the Zarqawi enterprise. And it had sort of the stamp of approval of Al-Qaeda, of bin Laden himself, which made it much more powerful for some of the extremists. But it also had autonomy. So Zarqawi had the ability to do things that, without waiting for bin Laden's blessing. And he certainly did. He became as violent as he wanted to be.
And how big, do we have any numbers of how big his official organization became at its peak?
Well, just to give you a sense of numbers, we think about 10,000 foreigners came from other countries to join the organization.
Wow.
And his army within Iraq, mostly Sunni ex-soldiers, just Sunni people from the street, was probably 3 or 4 times that big. So it wasn't a massive army, but it was pretty sizable.
And King Abdul is over there looking at this going, this guy was a Jordanian. I accidentally let him out of prison, and I told the U.S. never to fucking come here, and look where we are.
Yeah, and I told you so. There's a big slice of that.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.